Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm glad you could join us for another tea tasting that we're doing. And we're looking at a pu'er tea. We've talked a little bit about pu'ers in the past. Pu'ers are a unique processing method. Pu'ers originated from Yunnan province in China, which is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, tea location in the world. Not only that, we're talking about Adagio, and we've looked at several Adagio teas, but this is one of the first times that we've looked at an Adagio tea that is in Adagio's Masters collection. A Masters collection is one of Adagio's, I guess we'd say one of their higher status tea collections, that it's new. These are newer on the market, and we're going to go ahead and give this one a try. It's trying to compete with some of those, some of those other brands out there that have labeled themselves as higher quality, bigger names, well, not bigger names, but bigger value, I should say, or bigger quality would be the best way. So, enough of me rambling. Let's talk about what we've got here. We've got our tea. We've got our kettle. Water's just been brought to a boil. It's been cooling for a few seconds now. And we've got our traditional Chinese style gaiwan. So we're going to go ahead and we've got a Chinese tea. We've got a Chinese style of preparation. Let's go ahead and get this started. Now, because this is a smaller, and these are the smaller tins that Adagio uses, sometimes it's easier just to use your fingers. So there's about a pinch there. Not quite enough to really cover the bottom of my gaiwan, so I'm adding another pinch. Need a little bit more. That's a third pinch, as you see, a pretty good amount there, so that you've coated the bottom of your gaiwan. Say the bottom, not even the bottom third, the bottom fifth, bottom quarter, I would say, quarter at the most. This is a 4-ounce gaiwan, by the way. So set that aside. Let's go ahead and get this one steeping. Adding our water, and we want to swirl it around. We want all the leaves to get coated in water, and we want enough water so that, we've got enough that the lid, you can actually kind of push the leaves so that they're in the center, and the lid rests right on top. A little bit of water rises up above the lid. Actually, it's to the brim of the rim of the cup part, the bowl part, so we're going to set that over to the side very carefully as we move on and talk a little bit about this dry leaf, or I should say introduce this tea first. We do talk about the dry leaf, the wet leaf, and the liquor, but first we do want to talk about, this is Adagio's YunnanGoldenPuer. Okay, steeping instructions or recommendations are listed on the package. As you know, those are not, in many cases, those are suggestions depending on personal preference, depending on what kind of elements you seek to draw out of a tea. But a sample size like this is available for $9 at Adagio's website. And you can find that just below at the Buy This tea button, just below this video. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this tea. Let's talk about the dry leaf as we kind of move along here. Give it a shake a little bit, let the air get in there. There are some characteristic pu'er type of smells. You are getting those earthy notes here. It's kind of there's a dried mushroom component that's really coming out, combined with a smell that's almost like wet sawdust. So get that nice earthy dried mushroom combined with the wet sawdust, and that gives you a little bit about what you've got here. Now I'm keeping an eye on my pu'er here because as you steep it, pu'ers, you don't necessarily, if you want to steep it that long, and actually that's quite a good steep time already. We've got a lot of tea, a lot of color coming out already. So I'm going to pour this into my fairness cup or pitcher here. which is great if you are serving more than one person, but especially with a puer. The top liquor there looks thinner and lighter, but down at the bottom you can see it's getting increasingly darker. So if you just try to pour it from the gaiwan into several cups, some cups will be lighter and some cups will be heavier in that with that tea. So the pitcher allows you to distribute that more evenly. You get all the liquor out, rest there, and so you can get a nice, more consistent pour across multiple cups. So set that aside. We don't want to leave that too long because now our wet leaf is cooling off, and we want to catch some of the aromas coming off of that. But moving back to kind of talk about this dry leaf, talked about those mushroom type aromas. You're also seeing that one of the unique or the attributes of this tea is that it looks to be mostly, if not primarily, if not completely, needles. I mean, you were talking about 1.5 inch, 2 inch long needles, just like this one. They're golden in color. You get a lot of, you're getting a light fuzzy note as you rub your finger. You can actually kind of, especially from the tip down to the stem of this leaf, you feel the fuzz there starting to bend, starting to create some friction because you're rubbing it against the grain of the fuzz there. Yes, golden brown in color, tippy, buddy, I could say, fuzzy as well, and that's the characteristic of these. While that's not always the characteristic of all puers, especially if you get a puer cake, those are kind of recipes. Those are a blend of more mature, darker looking leaves with some of the needles, and usually, oftentimes they're smaller needles. Okay, but moving along then, let's talk a little bit about this wet leaf before it cools off too much. Those mushroom notes are really starting to come out more now. Still some of that. I associated it also. Sometimes you get some, if you ever, as a kid maybe, or if you've got an oak tree around, you may have found some crushed acorn. Pick up a few of those wet acorns, crushed acorn, and smell the meat of that acorn. There's that kind of earthy, woody, again, slightly mushroomy type, dried mushroom type smell that is coming off of these leaves. As you look at these leaves, I'm going to scrape off what has stuck to the lid here, so we can talk a little bit about these needles, these tips here. Very delicate. So far, that one wasn't able to really open up and show anything inside that. Here's one you can actually see the outer leaf has peeled off, and again a needle or tip there. More needles, smaller needles. Got a nice, I would probably say this is a dark bister type of color. Very rich, dark, blackish browns here, and that's characteristic here. Some are lighter, a little bit away from the bister, over more back towards that gold, ever so slightly. So still same size, of course, so not really much to add there. Moving on to our liquor. What's the story here? We've got a nice, rich, almost cocoa-looking color there. Deeper browns than, say, like a red tea. Puers go through a different process, so they're not really considered it would be unfair to classify them as a black tea in many ways. They often stand in their own category. But as we pour this, we can get a good smell here. Still those earthy notes coming out, dried, those woodsy, dried mushroom notes coming out. A little bit of something that reminds you of a dark chocolate. It's kind of that, cocoa type, cocoa powder, dark cocoa powder type smell coming off. Light, fainter than the other more dominant smells. Still some of that, a little bit of that cocoa type of feel, cocoa powder type feel in the mouth. So it does, or that dark chocolate. It does have a kind of a dark chocolatey feel to it. Not the earthiness has subdued, so that it's not overpowering. Again, some of that kind of wet acorn type of note there. What I'm also finding though, the body is gentle. It's smooth, but it drops off fairly quickly and moves towards a faint wateriness. Not a lot of, you can't really comment on bitterness or astringency. If anything, it gives a light sweet feel, like that dark chocolate, minus the bitterness that can come with dark chocolate. So it's got a bit of a smoothness with that kind of lightly sweet feel on the mouth. On the other hand, as far as aftertaste goes, not the most extended aftertaste, not a lot of punch coming out of this. It fades off fairly quickly, or I should say more quickly than some of the other puers that we've tasted together. You know, in previous tastings, I did give this more than one taste, and that second steeping, fairly consistent in that it was lighter in the aftertaste. It was briefer in that aftertaste window as far as aromas and flavors coming out there. So when I look at this tea as a whole, one, it does have some of those some aftertaste. It does have a nice smooth feel to it, although those are kind of rather brief. There is not a lot of off-putting, kind of weird, earthy type notes in the liquor. Those have moved off as we steeped it. It does have a lot of needles, which are some of the more delicate, generally more valuable part of the tea plant. But looking at it as a whole, probably higher than some of other Adagio's puers, but in the general category of puer, still not the strongest showing, and so we give it an 80. I'm going to give it an 86. I would like to have seen a fuller, more extended aftertaste with a little bit more depth to it, more intensity to it. So this was Adagio's YunnanGoldenPuer that we looked at here together. This week, coming up Wednesday, Thursday, we do have a Wulong from Rishi Teas, and we have a black tea, a Keeman from Tiga Schwedner. So come back and join us for those. Also, be aware next week, Walker Tea Review will be at World Tea Expo. I'll be sharing some information with you from some of those interviews and other discoveries that we find there at World Tea Expo.